I am Teo Thomas, and this is the Robustry Channel, where we help you to level up and live a more robust life, the life that you deserve. Today we're going to be talking about deadlines, and from what I've seen on YouTube, there's a lot of discussion about whether or not deadlines are important. Some people will say, oh, no, deadlines are not important. In fact, you shouldn't use deadlines. And other people say, yeah, deadlines are important, but you have to be realistic about it. And I'm going to tell you from my own experience with 30 years as a personal trainer and personal coach that deadlines are important. They are vital to getting the results that you want. Jim Carrey is famous for the story that he wrote himself $1 million check. I don't know if it was Canadian dollars or American dollars. Doesn't really matter, does it? But he dated the check 10 years from the date that he wrote the check out. And lo and behold, before the 10 years ended, he achieved it. Now, he had to work for it. He had to continue on his desired path, or maybe that was his destiny to be a comedic actor. But he had to continue on. He had to show up day after day after day. He had to continue to be the best version of himself every single time. Even when he felt like he just couldn't do it, he felt like he was going to fail, he had to go out there and be the best version of himself at that particular time. And he achieved it. I don't know how much time it was, but it was less than 10 years. But that's a deadline. And a realistic deadline, too. It may have been only 5 years, too. I don't remember. But he was realistic and said, I believe I could do it in 10 years. And the same is true with anything. The mind affects your emotions, and your emotions really affect your body, and that makes the biggest difference of all. My background, again, is that the first 1/3 of my life I spent as a computer programmer and data analyst. When I burnt out on that, I switched, and I went for something completely different, and that was personal training and personal coach. Originally, I started off because I was in such bad health and such bad shape that I wanted to do something to get myself into better health and better shape. And I found it was so exciting because when I started off, I was in such bad shape, nobody believed that I could do it. Nobody believed that I could make the changes that I did. And within 6 or 7 months, I was honestly being offered modeling contracts. If you don't set a deadline in your goals, then tomorrow is always tomorrow, and you will never come to tomorrow. Here's the thing. Especially if you want to make physical or mental, emotional, psychological changes or spiritual changes in yourself, you need to write your goals. Now, a goal is different than the list of your desires. So when you make your list of desires, you should know how long it's going to take you to get there. And I always put myself and my clients, and I had a lot of clients over 30 years, I'm sure you could imagine that, I would always tell them to push themselves. So if somebody said, I want to lose so much around my waist, or I want to lose so much weight, or I want to put on weight like in the form of muscle mass, I would ask them, when do you need to have it done by? Now, sometimes it was not realistic. Like, well, I need to do it in 3 weeks because there's a wedding coming up and I have to fit this dress, or I have to fit into that tux. And the person had too much weight to lose, healthy. Yeah, maybe they could starve themselves and pass out and end up in the emergency room. But the point is you have to be realistic about your goals. And you also have to be willing to push yourself. So let's say you're saying, well, this year I would like to lose, let's do this in inches, I would like to lose 4 inches around my waist. And I'd say, fine, when's your deadline? Well, by Christmas. Okay, so you have 12 months. I'd say, well, why don't we push for this to get it done in 4 months? Well, I couldn't do that. Why not? Well, because that would just be too hard, be too difficult. How motivated are you to make that change? Now, that's just an example. And I mean, in some cases, I knew the person wasn't motivated enough to make it in 4 months. So I would say, okay, we'll do it in 6 months. But then I would help them to get it done in 4 months. In some cases, even fewer months, like in 3 months. Set deadlines for your goals, whatever they are for this year. Now, if you want to make $1 million and you don't have any source of income right now, I'm going to tell you, start with something smaller. I'm not even going to tell you put it off for 5 years or 10 years. I'm going to just simply say, start with something smaller, more realistic. Like, if you don't have any source of income right now, maybe suddenly, unexpectedly, getting $100 or $50 or $10 or whatever your currency is, that's where you should start. And then put a deadline for it. Something realistic. If tomorrow is realistic for you, that you believe you could do that, then great, go ahead, do that. But if you try that and tomorrow comes and you don't get that goal met, then go for something a little more realistic. Give yourself a couple of weeks, maybe a month to reach that, with the expectation that it could happen tomorrow. So whatever your goal is, whatever your dream is, put a deadline on it. If you have, let's say, a medical health problem where you need to have surgery done, and you don't put a deadline on it, that health problem can escalate and escalate and escalate until finally a more serious surgery has to be done. I use that as an example because a lot of people have that. And a lot of times people put it off for one reason or another. I'm not talking about for insurance reasons because that's out of your control. However, you can still put down the deadline. So let's say you should have a surgery within this year and you have either poor insurance or no insurance. You write down, say for example, exactly 6 months from today that the surgery is done. Now, the next step on this, it's not just enough that you write down these deadlines, but then you go back to the list, the gratitude list. That's what I like to call it. And you write down on your list, I'm so happy and grateful now that, for example, you had the surgery. Now that I've got my new car. Now that I have my new home, my new apartment. Now that I have my new job. Now that I have my new relationship. And you don't have to deal with the deadline anymore. So every time you read that, you just focus on what it says there. So they're two separate lists, really. And that's something that a lot of times people forget about because they combine them into one list. And that puts a lot of stress on you, especially if your subconscious mind is going to reject it. And again, this channel, Robustry, we focus on people who think differently. It's called neurodivergent. And that can be that you have PTSD. And if you've been through a trauma and you have PTSD, you have more of an inclination to lean towards the negative out of self-preservation. And that is really, really hard if somebody's telling you, you know what, you have to set this deadline for 6 months from now. And you try to put all your energy into that, hoping and praying that you can believe it enough. But there's always that demon in the back of your mind going around saying, yeah, but things don't work out the way that you expected them to because of this or because of that. Or if you have ASD or OCD or you have Asperger's, either you will go one way where you can fully believe it, that this is achievable, or you might go the other way in which you just think nothing is achievable. And I think everybody kind of does that from time to time, but there are some people who are more predisposed to that. And so that's what this channel really focuses on, is helping all of us who struggle more than the others. And the funny thing is that those of us who struggle more, when we believe, we really believe, and it seems like miracles happen. But when we don't believe, when we can't believe, when there's a block between us and our goals, then it seems like nothing is real. I'm Theo Thomas, and this is the Robustry Channel, where we help you to level up and live a more robust life. If you got anything out of this, if you benefited even just a little bit, why don't you give it a thumbs up and leave a comment or questions down below. I read through them and I'm willing to help you out. And if you think that this could help you again in the future with other material I have, why don't you subscribe and hit the bell so that way you get notified when new material comes up. Thanks.